Hi guys. In a previous video, and I talked about Jesus being mocked and being right before his crucifixion. Well, now I'm going to talk about his crucifixion. I'm going to read his verse, go in depth of his crucifixion, and talk about how I feel about it. The soldiers led Jesus away, and as they were going, they met a man from Cyrene named Simon, who was coming into the city from the country. They seized him, put the cross on him, and made him carry it behind Jesus. A large crowd of people followed him. Among them were some women who were weeping and wailing for him. Jesus turned to them and said, "Women of Jerusalem, don't cry for me, but for yourselves and your children. For these days are coming when people will say, 'How lucky are the women who never had children, who never bore babies, who never nursed them.' That will be the time when people will say to the mountains, 'Fall on us,' and to the hills, 'Hide us.' For if such things as these are done when the wood is green, and what will happen when it is dry?" Two other men, both of them criminals, were also led out to be put to death with Jesus. When they came to the place called the Skull, they crucified Jesus right there, and two criminals, one on his right and the other one on his left. Jesus said, "Forgive them, Father. They don't know what they are doing." They divided his clothes among themselves by throwing dice. The people stood there watching while the Jewish leaders made fun of him. He saved others. Let him save himself if he is the Messiah whom God has chosen. The soldiers also made fun of him. They came up to him and offered him cheap wine and said, "Save yourself if you are the king of the Jews." Above him were written these words, "This is the king of the Jews." One of the criminals hanging there hurled insults at him. "Aren't you the Messiah? Save yourself and us." The other one, however, rebuked him, saying, "Don't you fear God? You receive the same sentence he did. Ours, however, is the only right because we are getting for what we deserve for what we did. But he has done no wrong." And he said to Jesus, "Remember me, Jesus, when you come as king." Jesus said to him, "I promise you that today you'll be in paradise with me." This is kind of lightly tapping into his crucifixion. Like, this just shows how, how mocked he was. How mocked he was. But now let me go in depth of his crucifixion. This just didn't happen to him. He was mocked, he was beaten, really badly actually. Like, to the point to where his flesh was showing. His bones were showing too. Excuse me for a moment, sorry. And then now let's talk about his spiritual separation. Before I talk about spiritual separation, I want you to imagine a rock on the table. Imagine that rock, like, it doesn't matter what size, like, just like this size, about the same weight for all the rocks. Imagine a rock on the table. Imagine that rock is your sin. And then and if you sin again, then put another rock on that table. Now put on all of your sins on the table. Pretty heavy, isn't it? Well, now then imagine all of the world's sin. All of the world's sin. Imagine how heavy that is. Well, that's how heavy Jesus felt when he was carrying all that sin for his death. Now, when Jesus spiritually separated from his sin so that God could unleash his wrath out on that sin, in order for the people to be forgiven, Jesus had to die on the cross just for people to go to heaven. And imagine how painful that would be for Jesus. Like, that's pretty unfathomable with what Jesus went through. Yet people don't really understand how much Jesus went through. You know, I'm disappointed because Christianity is the most mocked religion. And yet, people don't understand what Jesus went through just for us. His love for us drives him in order to go through what he went through. He shouldn't have went through that. Yet he did anyways. He never deserved any of this. Yet a lot of people don't even care, to be honest. Which is disappointing. Because they either never picked up the Bible or just never cared for Jesus to begin with. I want you to do a reality check with yourself. How much time have you spent with God? I want you to spend more time with God by reading the Bible more and by praying more. Because Jesus is coming. I'm only saying this to warn you, not to scare you. Comment, love Jesus. I love Jesus if you agree with me that this sucks for Jesus. And I'll see you next time for another verse.